Hi everyone, welcome to the Prime View series of interviews with top business and technology experts. I'm Dana Kohut, and today I'm delighted and honored to welcome Puneet Gupta, who is founder and CEO at Amberflo, a company that built a robust cloud and usage-based billing platform to help businesses across the globe to scale and build their customers based on usage data. Puneet, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. It's a great pleasure to welcome you to the show.
Good to connect with you.
Likewise, yes, I'm really happy to connect with you. I've been following the company, and when I heard from Adam Legreca, I was really happy, right, that I will have the opportunity to have you featured in the Prime View. So thank you for your time. It's a great pleasure.
My pleasure. Pleasure is mine. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, great. So, Puneet, before we dig deeper into what is Amberflo, right? What type of problems the company is trying to solve for your customers, right? I also heard the news that you got launched on Product Hunt. If you could share with us.
Yeah, sure. We did Product Hunt launch. We decided to do Product Hunt for a couple of reasons. One is, as you know, we ourselves are a developer platform, right? So we'll get into that, cloud metering and usage-based pricing and billing. But it is sort of an AWS style, developer-oriented, API-first platform that we offer. And Product Hunt is a good place because at least when we researched, that's where sort of developers hang out. New products are constantly launching. And so that was a good alignment for us. We wanted to kind of get in front of developers. And this was our first launch. So it was also important for us to get some early feedback from the developer community. So that was the primary reason why we chose Product Hunt. And it worked out pretty good for us. We kind of discovered along the ways there's a little bit of a sort of a pecking order. You want to kind of get into the top three slots or something like that. So we ended up in the top three. We ended up the number third product featured for that day, which
Congratulations.
is pretty good. And the way it works, as you know, right, the people. Thanks very much. But it's all community based, so the community kind of ranks your product, and by giving feedback and up leveling it. So it was a pretty positive experience for us. And what that did, as we had intended to, and we're hoping to get out of it, it just kind of got a little bit of the ball rolling, right? The developer community got to hear about us. The early ones came in, checked out the platform, gave us feedback. Some stayed on and started to develop on the product. And that I found sort of that virtuous cycle, that flywheel has continued on. So net, it was a positive experience for us.
Excellent, great. Yeah, so really congrats on the, so that's really the, recognition that you get from the developer community, right? And actually I went to check, right, the positioning of Amberflo on the Product Hunt, and I could see the lots of, positive feedback, right? People were, testifying of how easy and, like seamlessly they can actually use your tool and your solution for their company. So that's a really great thing, right? That when you get this first,
that is the best part, just especially when you're coming out of the gate, as it was for us, first time launch, to sort of get that direct feedback, and especially the folks who like the product and can draw from their own experience to give you feedback about what they see, what they like. We also got some suggestions for areas for improvement, which is exactly also what we were looking for. But net, as you can see, it was a very positive response. It certainly lit up our day.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I believe that many of our listeners would be familiar with Amberflo, but for those who don't know, what is the company working on? If you could give us the overview, right? What type of problems you are trying to solve for your customers? Just give us the short overview.
Yeah, sure thing. So, we are offering a platform, we call it cloud metering and usage-based pricing and billing platform. And what it enables businesses to do is, there's a trend now, more and more businesses are shifting to what we call usage-based pricing compared to a traditional seat-based or user-based. Companies are shifting to usage-based pricing, much like what Amazon, AWS pioneered. And as companies make the shift, they are realizing they need new technology set. And we'll get into that, but fundamentally, we're enabling companies who want to move to usage-based pricing model, or should they be so lucky to start with a usage-based pricing model. We're offering them an end-to-end platform that helps them to do usage instrumentation, basically track usage, and then bill and charge on usage. Okay, so therefore, the cloud metering and usage-based pricing and billing platform.
Yeah, so you said about this, that companies that they aspire to build to this usage-based metering, right, and billing and pricing of their customers. So how difficult that would be? I know that there are many companies that actually build in-house this solution. Like I know about Mirantis, I know about Twilio, that they have built their own solution, right? How effective is that comparing to having something off the shelf, like buying from those who do this professionally, rather than investing into your own time resources and building internally?
Yeah, no, great question. And we come up against that a lot, and that's, I think, largely, as of today at least, it's just kind of function of where we are in the maturity curve on the usage-based pricing and billing. But you're absolutely right. If you look at some of the leaders and the earlier players in this area, right? You mentioned Twilio, and there's a plethora of them. Of course, the cloud providers, AWS, sort of pioneered it, so that's kind of the table stakes. But the next generation companies like Twilio, Databricks, Snowflake, MongoDB, you name it, pretty much all platform level type companies. But even beyond that now, application level companies like Slack and a bunch of others are offering usage-based model or going in that direction. So you're right, some of the earlier ones, like you mentioned Twilio, Databricks, who started 5, 10, even 15 years ago. Most of these companies have had to build it in-house, quite frankly, because there wasn't anything available like Amberflo out there. Forget 5 years ago, not even a year or 2 years ago, right? So they had no choice but to build it in-house. And there's something telling even within that why they chose to build it, because while there were other solutions in the market, but those solutions were really designed for subscription pricing, right?
Okay.
So while there were good large companies offering pricing and billing solutions, but they were all oriented towards subscription pricing. So it's telling the fact that Twilio, Databricks, a whole bunch of these companies had to build it in-house, that there's already validation that that technology set was not working for usage-based pricing and billing, and these companies found themselves had no choice but to build it in-house. Okay, so that was kind of the status quo. But of course, now what's changed? The shift to usage-based is now accelerated. More and more companies are now doing it. It's almost becoming sort of the preferred model. We certainly believe that it will be the dominant model, right? And we have a thesis about that. We can also get into that. But I think the signs are already started to show. And I think what's happened, Dana, in the last few years, since the onset of, let's call them sort of the next generation cloud native businesses like Twilio and Databricks, now that they've been out in the market for some time, and some of them have gone public, so people can kind of look through their business model and pour through their finances. Now companies can actually see data and can use that data to draw their own conclusion that usage-based pricing is a better model. It is a more win-win, and I'm sure we'll get more into that. But anyhow, so now the trend is accelerating, and at Amberflo, we saw this a while back. Our thesis is, some of our team, myself, my co-founder, a few others, we came from AWS. Having worked at AWS, that's really where we first saw usage-based pricing model and some of the underlying technology that's needed to support and build out of the usage-based pricing and billing. So we had known that, it was, for us, it was always not a question of if, only a question of when. And I think we're now sort of at that threshold, that inflection point. And Amberflo now is a out-of-the-box turnkey solution that offers, next generation platform for cloud metering, usage-based pricing and billing. We are built from the ground up to specifically cater to this new environment, to these new feature sets. And, again, for the difference between building it in-house versus Amberflo, Now, for us, this is a product, right? So we have a roadmap about this. We are taking this into the future. We are continuously adding features, keeping on with the trend, and keeping our customers ahead of the curve. And that's the value of working with Amberflo versus building it in-house.
Excellent. Yeah, that's totally clear. And I would be curious to know, right? So you mentioned that there are clear signs that this becomes a dominant model, right, in the industry. So what are the signs for you that like the market is picking up this business model rather than subscription model, right? And like what are the benefits? I would be, before this interview, I was listening to several of your, like interviews that you were giving. And what one thing really stuck with me, you said that your solution is transformative to business, right? So if you could talk about this, what kind of transformation usage-based model brings to businesses, right? And how they can benefit from it. I would really appreciate that.
Very cool. Yeah, absolutely. Let me start off by saying, and we'll unpack it. I'll give more detailed sort of nuggets and back my statements with some data-backed statements. But let me just start by saying that look, AWS has now been out there for what, 15 plus years, all right? Okay, and if there was some inherent structural problem with this model, they would have turned it back. Okay, so I'm just saying is, okay, let's just look at what else is out there. And AWS actually is a good example because you have to realize AWS was not what it is today 15 years ago. They were basically a little, light bulb to the side, and they were catering to startups, right? It was one of those things that people had written them off that, yeah, this is just a skunk works to the side. It's really for developers, a couple of guys in a garage, right? But you can see of the tremendous growth that they've had. And today, of course, they cater to from a couple of guys in the garage to the largest enterprises, but the model is the same, right? It is the usage-based pricing and billing, right? So right through that, you can see that there's, this model scales, right? You don't have to take my word for it. They're still catering to the startups, and they're still catering to large companies, and they haven't had to change the model fundamentally. Okay. Then let's switch gears about, what is it about this model that is better for businesses? What is so profound? Why do we feel so confident that this will be the dominant model? I think it's already starting to go in that direction. In fact, we even go out and say that there's no choice. I mean, if you are a company thinking about whether this is the right model for me or not, I would say you need to look very closely because I would advise that you kind of get ahead of the curve, because if you're not doing it, I can guarantee you somebody starting a startup in your domain, in your category, is going to come and disrupt you specifically on the backs of this business model. Okay. So why is it better? It's better for a variety of ways. And like I was saying earlier, good news is now there's actual data that people can pore over and bring credibility to the statement that why it is better. Okay, but let's unpack, some of those benefits.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, so first is what usage-based pricing enables is it sort of, eliminates the step function in customers' adoption and growth. Okay, so what do I mean by that? If you look at the traditional models today, they are primarily, go to a traditional model pricing company, you go to their pricing page, if there's one, and if there's one, then, usually you'll see like, 3 or 4 or 5 different plans. There's maybe a starter plan, then there's a professional plan, then there's an enterprise plan, and then there's a contact us plan, or, some combination thereof. So that's the status quo today, right? And what has been problematic through that is, if you think about it, every time you have a new plan or a different plan, there's a step function, right? Somebody has to graduate from one plan to the next plan, and then from the next plan to the next plan. So this is what I refer to, there's a step function. And oftentimes, what has happened is, as companies put out these plans, they also do what's called feature gating, right? So you want to get to the professional plan. Well, professional plan will get you these 7 additional features, but it's going to cost you twice as much. And then I am, as a user, thinking, yeah, but of those 7 additional features, I only need 2 more. I only need 2 of those, right? So that's where sort of this arm twisting and elbow twisting kind of happens, right? There's these negotiations going on. You call, you talk, you try to find a middle ground, and that's what I refer to friction, right? Because anytime you are introducing sort of this dialogue and back and forth, there's definitely friction. You have to first come to an agreement and then graduate the customer to that new arrangement. And in the process, what you've also done is you have overburdened your business process. So inevitably, you probably have come up with some kind of a custom deal or some kind of a custom contract. And now you have to kind of track that in perpetuity, right? So coming out of the gate, whether you're a startup or a midsize or an enterprise, you start to do all of these things. At the end of the day, yes, you do ring the bell. Okay, we got the customer over to the next plan. But in the process, you build a lot of baggage along the ways that you're going to have to keep track. Now, contrast this with a usage-based sort of pay-as-you-go business model. You don't do feature gating. You basically have actually maybe just one plan. It is pay-as-you-go. How much you consume, you pay on the backs of that, right? And as we already discussed, there's no limitation in the model itself. Like, people get a little bit cold feet when I talk with them. Yeah, but I don't know if this is the right, what happens if they want visibility and all that. We'll come to that too, by the way. The model, visibility, lack of visibility, this is not a limitation of the model itself. This is nothing but pains. You just need the right tools. But anyway, so contrast that I was saying now with a usage-based pay-as-you-go, where there are none of these step functions. The consumer just pays for how much they use, and if they use more, they pay more, right? So you don't have to be, talking with them, hey, you're now graduating, or we need to graduate to the next plan, and then from the next plan to the next plan, and now you're coming up for a renewal cycle. All of this is just overhead. And imagine a world, if you take all of this away, then things just progress. And then you as a company can really focus on back to focusing on your products, making sure that you're giving your customers that great experience where as their usage grows, it's seamless, they continue to use more. And you can take all of that overhead cycles and all of the people who are doing these custom contracts and management, all of that, and you can actually divert those resources and put them back into the product to deliver that experience. And this is what people are finding who have been successful with usage-based, who launched with usage-based. Like I said, you started with Twilio and many others. Once you see this playbook, you are never going back because it just kind of builds upon itself. It's really the canonical definition of a virtuous cycle that just, once you get the wheel spinning, it just goes faster and faster, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's all still just one of the benefits. There's more, right? And because once you put your customer on this track, what you will also find, which is a metric that in the SaaS world, companies like to track the net retention rate, right? Or the net dollar retention, which basically means that, every year, let's say, quote unquote, when I come up for renewal, are my customers using my product more or less? Or, so net dollar retention or net retention rate is basically a measurement unit for that. And what they're finding is in this usage-based model, because there are no step functions, there's no feature gating. If your customer, if they are growing, which most companies are, then clearly the usage is also going to grow. So the net retention rate and the net dollar retention tends to be higher for businesses that are, delivering on the usage-based business model. So net, it is a huge win. It does take a little bit of more planning, like I said, a little bit more tooling to get started with usage-based models. So I certainly would say that is for sure. Because as you might imagine, unlike per user base, you just come up with some number, okay, $50 per user per month, and off you go. In usage-based, you do need a little bit more planning and a little bit more structured approach. You need to, like I said, have a usage instrumentation. You need to be able to track how much is being used by whom, when, what, where, and so. So yes, there's a little bit more infrastructure that's needed for you to be effective in usage-based, but that investment continues to pay dividends hand over fist into the future in perpetuity.
Yeah, those are, phenomenal points that you have mentioned. And I believe that lots of, as you said, that the company, once they try this usage-based model, they will now, they will never give it up or for subscription business model, right? But tell us more. You mentioned about some downsides, like more tooling, structured. It would require more structured approach. So this solution, right, usage-based solution that you are offering, does it work equally for small companies and enterprise companies? So your point of view, like, what are the benefits for smaller and larger organizations?
Yeah, again, that's actually an easy sale, as I already said. Again, look at AWS, look at other companies, all the companies we talked about. More what usage-based pricing also enables, by the way, for you is increasingly what's being called a PLG motion, product-led growth, right? So they kind of go hand in hand. In fact, I would say if you are a candidate for product-led growth, which usually is a function of the domain or which market segment and what kind of application or product you're selling, but if you feel you're a candidate for PLG, product-led growth, then you almost always have to back your PLG motion with a usage-based pricing. Otherwise, you're actually shortchanging your product-led growth motion. Okay. But back to your question. So startups versus large companies. So first is, yes, there is some infrastructure that's needed. Or let's put it this way. Okay, how do you get started on usage-based pricing, right? What are the first steps and the second steps and so forth? So, and this is where things are a little different. As I was saying, in the traditional model, per seat base, find a PM or you have a discussion and you go, okay, we're going to try with $50 per user per month. Okay. And you can later kind of adjust, but it's a simple thing. It's a back of the envelope calculation. You kind of just go in and see, right, how that works. In a usage-based world, you do have to start with basically putting a technology layer in your technology stack that we called metering, cloud metering, which is a fancy word for usage instrumentation. But it's not a big leap in the sense that, increasingly, if you are a cloud technology stack, basically if you're building in the cloud, then things like, observability, monitoring, logging, these are table stakes. Your technology stack most likely will already have it. And metering is one of those type of primitives, we call it, sort of technology building block. It's a new one because, if you hadn't been doing usage-based pricing, then you haven't had a need for metering. Because think about it, in a subscription model, there was never really any need to meter, to usage track, right? And that is why this is a big shift, because you did $50 per user per month, money was collected upfront for X number of users. So you as company are not bothered to really track how much it's being used because they've already paid you the money. And you as the customer are sort of already resigned to the fact that you've already paid for, 100 users. Now, whether 87 actually used it or 56 actually used it, you're already out of the pocket to pay the money you already paid up front. So there was never really need to usage track, usage instrument, meter anything. So metering is this new artifact in the world of usage-based pricing and billing, but it's nothing complicated. We clearly offer it and you could build it yourself, but start with usage instrumentation. Okay, and we've written about that why this needs to be sort of its own category. There's some design principles and architecture aspects of metering that you want to get right. We've actually written about that. So once you get metering in place, you are on your way. Okay, because metering is, and anyways, we want to say that, if you are a business building in the cloud, metering is just quote unquote good hygiene. I mean, think about it this way. Cloud by nature is elastic, right? That was the big thing about cloud, right? Your resources you can use them up, you can dial them down, right? Everything about it is elastic. Well, if it's elastic, then you want to be able to track where you're using your cloud resources. And metering is also the tool for that, right? So metering, as the name implies, you meter what you use. You rather than relying on an AWS bill to come at the end of the month and then you start to parse through that and see how much you used, metering is the tool that you basically take control and put in these probes to where you're using resources. So you can use metering to track your own use of your cloud, backend cloud, and you can use metering to track what your customers are using on your product. and services. And once you put metering in place, you're on your way, because metering will tell you at any given time, basically, what's the job of a metering service is to answer the following question: what is being used by whom, when, what, where, how much? Independent of pricing and billing, just anytime anybody in the company can raise their hand, what is this customer using? What parts of our product, how much, when, where, what is it trending? That's the job of a metering service. You put a metering service in place, you are now effectively operating in the cloud with the right posture, with the right tool set. And now with metering in place, you can start to build pricing and billing on top. Okay. And we like to say that, metering is the system of record, like the record in a price, usage-based pricing and billing world is not the price model, it's actually the usage record is the system of record. Once you have a usage record that you can rely on as being accurate, in perpetuity, historical, and is real time, that is the system of record, because pricing models will come and go, they will change, you will change the pricing up and down. But as long as you have the usage record, you basically have full visibility. So that's kind of how you go about building usage-based pricing and billing. And then once you have this metering artifact, then there's some new tools that are available to you in the world of usage-based pricing and billing. We provide something that we call a price modeling tool, right? So now that you have the usage data, imagine, now you want to think about, okay, what would be my usage-based pricing plan? I'm not sure, should I have 2 vectors or 3 vectors? Should I also charge for APIs, or should I charge for storage, or should I charge for instance hours, or whatever your domain is, or some combination? And then even within one of these tiers, should it be like a tiered model, or should it be a unit-based model? Like tiered model would be, first, 1,000 APIs cost you this much, the next 1,000 cost you this much, that's sort of like a tiered model. So how do you decide what is the right mix? Right? Because, you kind of have to do some experimentation. You have to do some modeling. So price modeling tool is helpful if you have the usage data in place. Then you can basically construct sample pricing plans, do A/B testing, and see, which plans net you what kind of revenue, because every customer's usage profile is different. Right? Somebody may be stretching your product more in this area. Somebody may be stretching your product more in that area. So the usage cloud metering gives you the profile, actual, data on the usage. And now you can construct different pricing plans, and you can do some A/B testing. This is basically the formula for how you start with usage-based pricing, how you launch, and you stay ahead of it, right? So we're evangelizing it. We understand it's still early. Not many folks have kind of gone through this experience.
Yeah.
So there is a level of anxiety within folks that, too many moving parts. Where do we start? Will we get it right? What happens if we don't, right? But I chalk that up to just it's being a little bit early days. You need the right tool sets. And believe me, this is nothing but a data-backed exercise. In fact, and so much so that data does the talking. You take bias out of the equation. You take, like I said, there's no back of the envelope hand wavy thing, right? This is all data-backed exercise, and you cannot get it wrong. If you put the right tools, you will stay ahead. And so that's kind of the way to go about it.
Yeah, but that's really exciting, and as you said, it's like early days, and what you do, like, like teaching, right, companies about these solutions, right, how they can actually benefit from it. So what do you think companies get wrong about pricing when is this the complexity? Is this, as you said, there is a formula and there are so many like kind of unknowns in the formula, and they are, not a bit resilient to that. So what is it that they get wrong, and how they can actually try and see the benefits?
All depends a little bit of, what is your domain, what is your company, what product you're offering, and, who is your audience. So that is kind of the starting point. And you sort of have to first get that right. And, let me just kind of articulate what I mean there. For example, let's say, is PLG motion right for you? How do you determine that, right? Product-led growth. I want to give my products, I want to have customers land on my website. I want to have them land directly on the product. I want to start off with a free trial or a free tier and kind of take the customers through that journey, right? That's sort of the PLG motion. Is that a right model for you? How do you decide that? I think, that is ultimately a function of what I'm saying, domain or who your audience is and what sort of your target market segment. Meaning, usually PLG motion is good for product categories that, for which you have a large market size, or there are a lot of individual users or people who can make their decision to start with your product, right? So most products today is sort of in that category, but the flip side of that would be, let's say if you were selling to government, institutions, or, some very specific domain, like just, you had a solution for the top, 100 banks or something like that, maybe then PLG is not the right motion for you. Okay, so that's you kind of have to get that bearing right.
Okay.
How you work your way backwards from there? Okay, so I'm going to be PLG based, and then I'm going to be usage based, pricing based, right? And then, there is a playbook. Believe me, it is not something that you have to leave it to chance, and you just kind of have to do some hand baby thing. There are blueprints out there. We certainly can help, but there's plenty of information out there that, let's say, if you were going down the path of product-led growth backed by usage-based pricing, as I articulated, where do you start and how do you build on top? Now, what people can still get wrong is, despite I talked about sort of the data-backed approach, ultimately at the end of the day, you have to put a price figure against a feature, against a usage metric, right? And you'll see as you take the path as I've outlined, and if you put metering in place, you'll have good visibility on what that number needs to be, because you can now correlate to what my cost is and what my markup needs to be, and then based on that. But you may still discover when you actually go into production that maybe it's a little bit off. And that's why I said that, price modeling is your friend. You have to keep that sort of in your back pocket and continuously sort of iterate on as real data comes in on the backs of a model that you've already put out, to see that, is there a variance, are one type of customers kind of, either being charged disproportionately or maybe not paying as much as they potentially could, right? Because they are stretching on one vector that perhaps you have not priced correctly and you have some wiggle room there. So that's basically an exercise. And this is something that you have to just kind of build into an iterative discipline, right? Whether you're quarterly planning, maybe even monthly planning, some PM or finance or accounting team has to kind of be just iterating over this data and correlating that, how things are progressing, and then adjust. So that's what I would say, kind of the model for usage-based pricing, how you stay ahead of it. You don't have to live in an anxiety. Oh my God, what has happened? Are we leaving money on the table, or what happens here and there? And usage-based pricing can be changed. The tool should provide you ways to make that change easy, quote unquote, grandfather existing customers to the new pricing plan, all of that stuff. The tools ought to be able to handle that. So those are a couple of things that come to mind.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I would like to shift a little bit the focus from the product that you have built, the solution, right, to your professional experience. You are definitely very passionate about pricing, and I would be curious to know how your experience of working at AWS, right? I know that you were general manager there, right? You were building some of the key features on the cloud. How this professional experience actually shaped your vision of pricing solutions?
Yeah, absolutely. I love talking about that because, quite frankly, I credit quite a bit, of course, my experience, my learning experience to my time at AWS. That's where I first got introduced to the world of usage-based pricing and billing. But I was also, I consider myself lucky. I was there at a time, early days for cloud computing, early days for AWS itself, where back in the day, AWS itself was building some of these foundational building blocks internally, metering and how we internally power our business model of usage-based pricing and billing. So I was fortunate to have some visibility into that. But more than that, what I would say, sort of my story is, and I guess maybe not everybody coming out of AWS would be as passionate about usage-based pricing and billing, but I'll sort of share with your audience, what was it for me that sort of connected the dots? And I think, because I've played this back in my head, What it was is when I joined AWS, I'd already been working in the industry for 15 plus years. So I'd worked at some large companies before, large enterprise companies. And so immediately when I came to AWS and I saw this business model, and to their credit, they trusted me with a lot. They put me in a GM role, so I could see both. I was in charge of the P&L and also building of the technology set. It just struck me, this model was like what's the best way to say it? It's like an eye opener, to say the least, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just because I could see the growth trajectory that AWS was on at the time, and I could immediately pin it down that it was basically the business model that, in large part, not on its own, of course, clearly, you know, pace of innovation, new technologies, and new feature launches and product launches, all of that, of course, is there. But at the end of the day, that organic growth, that frictionless adoption, and I saw this for the directly when we launched our services. I was part of the team that launched 2 new services at AWS. So again, from the ground up. So that's where the dots connected for me. And when I said to you earlier in the interview that I fundamentally believe that this will be the dominant model. It is only a question of when. It's not a question of if. Because once you get on this path, this is really, quote unquote, the holy grail, right? There's nothing better, there's nothing more mature than you pay only for what you use, right? You cannot go wrong with that. And once you kind of overcome your anxiety about that aspect, it just works like magic. So that's where I first saw it. And so I've had this thesis to start Amberflo back from 2011, 2012. It's been there a long time. But about 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, when we started the company, I felt, and my co-founder and I came together that, we felt, I think we were kind of getting to that inflection point now where, yes, more and more companies were thinking about and starting to go down the usage-based pricing model. But that's where I first saw it, and I was just taken in by it. And I felt that there'd be, and also just awareness about, we also believe that, I think the existing technology tool sets that were built for subscription or the era before that, our personal belief is I think they will not transition well to supporting usage-based pricing and billing. It's just a fundamentally different way for doing pricing and billing. So that was also part of the thesis, which then led to our starting our company, Amberflo.
Yeah, that's amazing, right? That it's also, probably it talks a lot about you as a professional, that you were able to spot, right, that this is itself can be a business model, right? It has a bright, like this usage-based pricing and billing has a great potential, right, for different businesses across domains, across industries. That is something that would be in a high demand and will be adopted, right, sooner or later. As you said, it's not if, it's rather when it's gonna be.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're still, we're still in the early days, like I said, I mean, even at AWS, there's still things that are to be desired for. I mean, this is a domain, this is a category, it's evolving, it's building, and as more and more businesses come on this business model, like I was saying to you earlier, there's a roadmap here. You can now think about, what comes next. There's all kinds of, imagine forecasting, AI, ML, projecting giving you good, accurate, reliable visibility into not just historical and current data, but future data on the backs of usage, right? The other thing is this data really trickles into other parts of the organization. So earlier, pricing and billing was perhaps a domain of certainly maybe marketing or finance, or maybe limited some product folks, because it was really just, like I said, a back of the envelope, price plans. In this world of usage-based, as we discussed, the visibility into the usage aspect, that's a data that everybody wants to see, right? Your support folks, somebody calls in, a customer calls into the problem, you don't going to ask them, how much of what you're using. You want to have that dashboard in front of you. Finance teams need to have that visibility. Product teams need to have that visibility. Engineering teams need to have that visibility. So it is this is definitely a domain, and we're just starting to scratch the surface right now.
Yeah, totally. I believe that, as you said, this visibility also serves well for more, as you said, like across all these teams, right? Like support teams, also for sales, marketing, engineering, and so on and so forth, right? So, Puneet, I cannot thank you enough for coming and sharing with us your knowledge and your insights. And I really look forward to see how your company grows and expands, right, with more and more customers that will see great benefits of usage-based pricing and billing. So thank you so much for your time, for your insights. It's been a great pleasure.
Oh, likewise, thank you so much for having me. Really enjoyed our talk, and hope to chat with you again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Very good. Bye-bye.